You are now listening to Straight Facts, only on Big Gold Belt Media with your host, Celis.
What's going on, good folks? We are back live again. Your boy Silly Celis here, and I got my buddy, my boy, Jamal the Giant Crab. Jamal, how you doing today, man?
Hot, man. It's hot as all hell outside.
It is. And then my home wants to go into the energy savings because I try to have a little smart device. So now it's going to be no air conditioning for the next probably 2 hours while it's still trying to save money. So we'll see how I be. Hopefully I don't melt by the time we end this show today.
I hope you got Gatorade because you're going to need to replace them electrolytes.
Yeah, something's going to happen. And as I say that, my water's not here. The washing machine's going downstairs. I'll figure it out. I will be fine. I just am not prepared right now. But there are a lot of things in the world of sports to talk about, some big things, and actually we got some breaking news.
Literally breaking news
to share. And of course, this is a sports show. And we do have a wrestling show in our other but when you talk about sports and wrestling or sports entertainment, there's things that align back and forth that we had some breaking news. So as of about 45 minutes ago, it came out on the Twitter that Vince McMahon has announced his retirement. At the age of 77, and Vince McMahon, if I can pull it up here really quickly, he made his announcement, said at the age of 77, it's time to retire. Thank you, WWE Universe, then, now, forever, together, and hashtag WWE and thankful. So when you think about retirements, you have a whole bunch of retirements in all of sports. It could be emotional, it could be a send-off and things of that nature. And Vince uses on Twitter to announce his retirement. What's your thoughts about how Vince retiring affects wrestling, how that affects sports in general? What do you think about that landscape?
So, I mean, not to use the cliche, but Vince is actually a master of controlling the narrative. Mm-hmm. It will be an interesting SmackDown tonight to see if any of that plays into what it is. If you are a fan of WWE and you don't really consume any other bit of wrestling than the WWE, whether it's wrestling news or podcast or anything like that, then in that bubble, it's kind of like this is sudden and it doesn't make sense. And also, this is probably the most un-McMahon-like thing I've ever seen him do. Where's the pomp? Where's the circumstance? Where's the fireworks? Where's the pyro? I mean, this guy created the Thunderdome. This guy, created WrestleMania. He changed pay-per-view. He's done all of these things. And for him to just announce a fleeting message on Twitter is the definition of anticlimactic. So it really will be interesting to see what happens with SmackDown tonight. It really will be interesting to see what retirement means. Maybe he's stepping down. Well, what happens to his shares? What happens to his stocks in the company? Who gets control of that? Who's going to be CEO? Will Stephanie continue in that position? Will we see, when does that go into effect? Yeah, he's retiring, but when is he leaving? Today or 6 months from now? Is there a transition period? These are the questions that I don't really see answers to yet. I only see the thing of, oh my God, Vince is gone. And I guess, allegations and whatever. But with anything, there is a process to this. And if this is step one of the process, how long does this process last? So really interesting stuff.
That's a good question, Mo, because when you think about this, and once again, we'll say the allegations and all that deep debrief when we on our, Big Gold Belt podcast every single Thursday. Check us out here, live on Twitter and all your platforms for Big Gold Belt. But when you think about this in the world of sports, you can think about it in two ways. So Vince has been with WWE and is well known with wrestling for a long time. But as I think about this, and I don't mean to say this in a negative light, to me, this kind of feels like a Joe Paterno type retirement of what he did for Penn State. Or am I wrong by this? Do you see this as somebody as a legacy? When you think about people that's been with one franchise for a long time, the Kobe Bryants, the Reggie Millers, I can't say Emmitt Smith, but let's say the Jim Kelly, people that's been with one organization for a long time. Does Vince McMahon align with that, or is it kind of aligned with going in a negative way, but without deepening all of the allegations part?
Okay, so the short answer to that, as far as his legacy goes, Vince isn't Cal Ripken, or he isn't Emmitt Smith. He isn't Jerry Rice or Steve Young. He isn't, Gretzky, or he isn't Sidney Crosby, because they're just players.
Yep.
He built the stuff, and that's the difference. So if you could somehow take Roger Goodell, Alex Ovechkin, and Patrick Ewing, and put them in a blender, that would still only be half of what Vince McMahon, his legacy has done for North American wrestling, because we are still talking about the things, and he's still inventing. I mean, the Thunderdome during the pandemic.
Yep.
That being the thing. The long and short of it is that his legacy kind of suggests more than just a simple, "Oh yeah, I'm gone." Like, what? No, I mean that's one thing. And then, of course, there are the allegations and all this other stuff, too. Again, no charges have been filed. Nothing has been officially found out. But the long and short of it is that, as I said before, there's still that period, that transition period, and what that looks like. And yes, it would be remiss of me to not mention the reason why this sudden, this cliff. It wasn't even a slippery slope. He went Wile E. Coyote off the cliff, looked down, and then fell a mile to the floor. And that is what it is. Yes, it is. If these allegations are true, then, he can be in that same condo in hell with Chris Benoit. But the bottom line is that at the surface, as of right now, what really does this mean? And that's kind of where I am with it.
Indeed. And just think about it. A short 3 or 4 months ago at WrestleMania, he was one of the main highlights where ESPN was giving coverage with him and Pat McAfee being Pat McAfee being more of a sports star during that time, highlighting or being the brand of the show. So when you think about it like that, it's like, what do you see for Vince McMahon in the future? Because you thought he was going to build on that for what he was doing for ESPN, for Peacock, and things of that nature. But once again, it's just going to be very interesting to see what takes place in the future for that. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about on the Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast last night was the ratings and SmackDown, and in particular their contract with Fox is up in 2024 at some point. Yeah. I think it's early 2024, but definitely that year. Is SmackDown worth $1 billion? That's what Fox paid for in 2019, and that's got to be the measuring stick for what they would pay for next time.
Yep.
Now that Vince is gone, what does that look like for SmackDown specifically? Because, I think NBC and WWE have a more, homogenous relationship in that, that's a thing that's a bond that's a little bit tougher to break. Fox doesn't have to care. So do you, and I don't want to say save SmackDown, but how do you, reappropriate the brand, all of the brands? Triple H earlier today was announced as he got Johnny Ace's old job, talent relations.
Yep.
Global head of talent relations or something like that. And now that Vince is gone, and the word, of course, is that Stephanie and Nick Khan will share duties as CEO. Well, how does that appeal to the rest of the board?
Yep.
Obviously, I have more questions than answers, but as far as Vince leaving, this is, maybe a Joe Paterno type of a thing, but even still, that's just Penn State. This would be akin to, a government official.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
This is this is Richard Nixon. That's how big this is for wrestling. This is Richard Nixon leaving. In spite of Watergate.
Yep.
That's the moment that we are in, and I wasn't alive then, but the history suggests that that's a big damn deal. This is what that is. Absolutely.
And even speaking of what you said earlier too, when you think about $1 billion that SmackDown is paying for this sports entertainment show, TV deals are huge across football and basketball. And even I mentioned last week when you talk about who's going to take over the rights for the NFL Sunday Ticket. This is a competitive market where people are putting in their money to produce a product of sport. And when you think about where wrestling is, where does this lie? And you have somebody like Vince McMahon is huge on this. Do you want to continue with that investment, or is the product going to go down because somebody who has been there for generations and generations, probably 2 generations of father-sonhood for some people, of where it is now. And shifting to that, as we kind of shift to our next topic, what was on Fox recently is our All-Star game for baseball. And as we wanted to shift a majority of this show about baseball, but we had to tie in Vince McMahon on his retirement. Baseball had their All-Star game.
You can't overlook that.
No, you cannot. You cannot at all. And once again, broke here within the hour. So, check us out. That if we got live stuff on Straight Facts with Sellers Show, we'll break it live for you, especially in the world of sports and entertainment. And as we look into baseball on Tuesday, their ratings was very much so down, from years past. And I think if I get it right, it was about 9% that it was down from last year. But about 4 or 5 years ago, baseball thought they had the best All-Star game because of this competitive format of whoever won this game became the division or the conference that had the World Series home field advantage. And I guess it worked for a little bit, but now that it's going down to the wayside, and not the wayside a little bit, but it's lost some viewership. What is your feeling by you being a huge baseball fan? What is your feeling of the All-Star game format? Does it need shifting again, or how do you think it is?
So I'm looking at the ratings right now for Tuesday, and the All-Star game was first in total viewership, first in adults. It basically won the night. So that's kind of what it's going to be. And if you're selling something, you're going to sell the best of it. With that said, 7.5 million people watched the All-Star game. That's persons 2 and older. A majority of men watched, and mostly adults watched. However, America's Got Talent on NBC at the same time had 6.1 million people watching.
Ooh, that's close.
So if you are the All-Star game, a once-a-year event, that is something that should have blown away the competition as far as its notoriety, as far as its, meaning in sports culture in North America. And I'm not saying that it barely beat out, because, again, 1.4-ish million people is a hell of a number but they beat out the Nick Cannon talent show. Yeah. That should be a red flag for Major League Baseball. With that said, as far as your question was about the game itself, and to be honest with you, I haven't watched the All-Star game since that year they were in Milwaukee and they ended in a tie, and then they canceled the rest of the game because I want to say that was 2012, 2011, something like that.
I think that was Ryan Braun's MVP year, was it?
Yeah. So that just kind of is kind of a joke. I do wish there were other events during All-Star Weekend. Mm-hmm. The Home Run Derby is the centerpiece of All-Star Weekend. Yeah. And yes, they do have a celebrity game. Yes, they do have a rookie game. But honestly, since we are in the StatCast era, I would like to see certain skills competitions like the NBA has. Mm-hmm. Who can throw the curviest curveball? Who can throw, a knuckleball with the most spins? Who can throw the slowest pitch?
Interesting point.
Like just something that gives a little bit more, and also that invites more players to come out for festivities that they may not have a chance to play in any other way. Mm-hmm. And it just gives more people something to do. I would like to see the minor league All-Star games coincide with the major league All-Star games. Put it all in the same city. Yep. If they're going to do Los Angeles for the Major League All-Star game, why not have the AAA All-Star game in Anaheim? Mm-hmm. Have the AA All-Star game in Rancho Cucamonga? Have the Single A All-Star game, and so on and so forth. Yep. And in most areas, you can get away with that. There aren't too many teams in locations where there's nothing else nearby. Even in this area, All-Star games in National Park, AAA games in Baltimore, AA games in Bowie, Single A games in Fredericksburg. You can do it. Yep. You absolutely could do it in most of the country. I do, and there's some great, crazy dimensions in minor league baseball, which I really think deserves a little bit more of a spotlight. Mm-hmm. Yes, we're talking about the All-Star game. And why are you bringing up minor league baseball? Well, the MLB bought it. They restructured it in 2021, and they streamlined all the teams, and now they're officially a part of the organization and not just affiliated. Well, why are we not mentioning these 120 teams that are around the country? So, more to the point about the All-Star game itself, I don't watch it. And I largely don't watch it because it doesn't mean anything. My favorite player is probably only going to play 2 innings, which maybe he gets 1 at bat. If that, it's not competitive because they have to shoehorn everybody in
Yeah.
And maybe they should just adjust the rosters. Maybe not have 7 middle relievers.
And they got to represent one from each team.
So that's also a thing too. And all the coaches and stuff like that, are there. And it is a thing. I wish the All-Star game isn't going to go anywhere. I just think they need to modernize it and have it just be a little bit better. Whatever the balls they're using for the home run derby, use them in a real game.
Right. And let me add. Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm about to say, and I'm gonna add to a point too that you said earlier. I want to follow back on. Now, the All-Star game was in Los Angeles this year, and they're gonna say switch locations, but Los Angeles during the time of the All-Star, it's Seattle next year. So again, on the West Coast, but you're talking about a 5 p.m. Pacific start time compared to 8 on the East Coast. And I know if you live in the Los Angeles area, that's still in the middle of rush hour traffic where you may not even be home to even watch the show. Do you think being on the West Coast and starting that early on the West Coast time, does that hurt it or?
No, they're used to it. I mean, like, look, I'm not from the West Coast, but I've been out there a few times, for sporting events, and that it just is what it is. If you're from Chicago, 7 o'clock is prime time. That's just when stuff comes on. The news comes on at 9 o'clock. That sounds weird to me, because I'm not from there. That's not part of my culture. So it just is what it is. A 10 a.m. game on a Sunday, if you like an East Coast team, that's what you do. So it is what it is. And I think that everybody needs to be represented as well, because, Seattle shouldn't not get a game, because, or San Diego or San Francisco or Denver, or Phoenix shouldn't get an All-Star game because they're in a stupid time zone.
Gotcha.
And I think that's not particularly fair. I was in Hawaii in April, and it was, games came on at like 4 a.m. It was just dumb. It was the worst on a Sunday, because games came on at 8 a.m. But as far as the All-Star game itself, it's just the longest week of the year. There's nothing on Monday when the home run derby is. The All-Star game is a thing, and if you care, you care. If you don't, there's nothing else on. And Wednesday is the break. There literally is nothing else on in sports. And then Thursday, it starts back up again, and Friday is the big weekend. So I just want them to make it a little bit better. Put zones. Actually, you know what? Make it rock and jock baseball. If you hit the ball over 400 feet, you get double the runs. If you hit the ball over 425, you get triple the runs. If you make the third deck in, they don't have decks in Los Angeles. It's just a single level. But if you hit it onto the card course in Los Angeles, plus 5 runs. The All-Star game is 48-46. I don't. I mean, it's the All-Star game. Who cares? So just make it something ridiculous. Give me a reason to watch.
I agree. And you think about sometimes when the NBA does it, granted, they're a little bit creative with the Elam rule that they brought in, but even incorporate some arcade rules like the 3-on-3 basketball, the Big Three does. Maybe you have, like you said, that 4-point play that they have in that league. Let's make it an arcade style to make it fun and engaging for them, like their kids again.
Same thing, absolutely. Same thing with the NBA. I would love to see the Curry line come in where it's a 4-point line, 30 feet out, or a 5-point spot like rock and jock basketball used to have, last 10 minutes, they bring down a second hoop that's 15 feet high that's worth double the points. Just make it goofy and fun. Is it supposed to be this super sterile, classic game? No, that's what the regular game is. That's what baseball is.
Exactly.
But what does the wackiest version of that look like?
And would you take away the home field advantage as the winning for the AL versus the NL? Do you think that needs to go away?
That shouldn't be a thing.
If you earn yourself during the regular season to get that home field advantage, and you deserve that, you shouldn't have to work your tail off the season just to lose by All-Star game rule.
And the American League has won like 9 years in a row.
Yes.
So it just doesn't make sense that you're hedging your bets, and you can have a 110 win team in the National League, but because it didn't win the All-Star game, they don't get home field advantage. That's insane. That's absolutely insane.
Indeed. Yeah. Now we get ready to shift to topic 3. I got a couple more topics to go. Oh, but it didn't flow the way I wanted to. Let's go a little bit better on that one. All right. Now scrolling. All right, first half highlights. So a couple of first half highlights right now as I just look at my notes here. Right now, your division leaders, the Yankees by 12 games over the Rays in the AL East, Twins by 2 over my Guardians in the AL Central. And in the West, it's a 10-game lead with the Astros over the Mariners, but the Mariners have won 14 straight, and they have a little nice dance that they're doing. So are they going to close that gap even more as the season goes on? As we look at the NL East, your Mets are 2.5 up over the Braves and 6-4 in their last 10 games. The Brewers are only a half a game up on the Cardinals right now, but the Brewers have lost 3 straight and only won 3 out of their last 10. And the Dodgers are a 10-game lead over the second place Padres. Now, between everybody can say the Yankees and the Dodgers are probably the World Series predictors, but what are your couple of first half highlights? What did you see that was very well in baseball? What is the thing that's something that surprised you so far?
What surprised me as a Mets fan is that we didn't absolutely tank July. We're sitting at 58 wins, 58 and 35,
Yep.
which is absolutely unprecedented. Second best in the National League, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
The Dodgers have 61 wins. But for the Mets to outscore their runs allowed by 83 is insane. With that number, the point differential for Los Angeles is plus 172. Mm-hmm. So they are scoring runs at an incredible clip.
Yeah.
And giving up a below average number of runs, themselves, which is why they're 31 games over 500. They're on a 5-game winning streak, the Dodgers, and they're 9-1 in their last 10. That is absolutely, blistering pace.
Yep.
And as good as that is, unfortunately, the Yankees are doing better in the American League. Now, granted, they are showing signs of weakness. They just got swept in a doubleheader yesterday versus Houston. Thank God. 3-7 in their last 10. But it's a long season, and you can't, put anything past anybody. There are no guarantees. However, the Yankees do come to Baltimore for 3 games. Mm-hmm. So we're not must-win territory yet. I think Seattle's had a hell of a run. They're on a 14-game winning streak, which is the longest of the majors in a very long time. Minnesota leading the Central is actually pretty surprising. But then again, when you really think about it,
it's the worst division in baseball. It is, and I'm a Guardians fan.
Well, you know what? I actually disagree with you.
Really?
I don't think the AL Central is the worst division in baseball. I think that might have to go to the NL West. It really is the Dodgers and the Giants.
Everybody else. Oh, Dodgers and Giants. I say Giants.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm liking the Padres as a sneaky wild card pick, and we'll talk about predictions.
Everybody liked the Padres last year.
Yeah.
Until they absolutely imploded.
Right.
Right. So it's Dodgers, Giants, and then everyone else. Colorado has never been close since like the Larry Walker days. Arizona hasn't been close in 20 years. And San Diego, God bless them, they're the closest to even threaten. But the long and short of it is, this is the Dodgers division by far, hands down. And if San Francisco isn't going to come close, then it's not even fair at that point. With that said, though, in the first half, I think the biggest surprise, is a lot of the younger talent. Julio Rodriguez out there in Seattle, doing a hell of a thing. This kid in Pittsburgh, O'Neal Cruz, 6'7", and I believe he's the shortstop or second baseman, but he has a cannon for an arm, throwing it across the diamond, and he hits for power. That's just impressive. The kid in Pittsburgh, Hunter Green, his ERA is kind of high. I mean, I'm sorry, not Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. Yeah, his ERA is kind of high. Yes, he is a rookie, and he can't consistently throw 100 with accuracy. But, I'm not expecting him to be the next Aroldis Chapman. But I think the biggest surprise is maybe how bright the future looks for the younger talent in the league. And, so, I mean, it's a good thing. Also, another big surprise, and this hit me the first time I went there. Baltimore, please, Angelos, please, fix left field. Fix it. Put it back. You spent the money to tear up the field, to push back the left field wall, instead of spending money on right-handed pitching that won't give up dingers to left field. Why? And then you couldn't really do it because of the bullpen situation. So now you just have this physical cutout and let's stop. Just put it back. Come on.
But even with that, once again, they're still in wild card contention too. If they can get consistent, they won 3 in a row, but still,
Baltimore is pushing 500.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they're in the best division in baseball.
They are. I mean, they got the Rays. It might be the Rays and the Sox that get the 2 wild card positions within their same division.
They may send 3 teams to the playoffs. I mean, that's insane. So Baltimore, they are a hell of a lot better than they started. But the bottom line is they're nowhere close to making the playoffs unless they have a monumental collapse of the rest of the division. And I just don't see the Yankees doing that. I think the Rays are fighting hard. I think Toronto is actually putting on, an interesting move after firing their manager, Montoyo. It'll be interesting to see how that affects the team going forward as they start off the second half. And the Sox will always be the Sox. So where does that leave Baltimore? With a bum left field and at the bottom of the division. Come on, fix it. Just fix it.
Now talk about your Mets for a second. Now I was rooting hard for your Mets because I got a couple on my fantasy squad. Sterling Marte. I wish he could be consistent in his health because I know sometimes, he's been on again, off again. When he's on, he's on. But I'm a little bit disappointed with Francisco Lindor. What's your thoughts with him so far? Or you think he's being okay right now? I think his batting average is a little bit lower than what I would expect, but 16 home runs right now. But what do you think about him getting that big contract? Now, was his third year now with that big contract?
Yeah.
What do you think he stands?
Yeah. So obviously this isn't the Francisco Lindor that everybody saw in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And they thought they were going to bring Baez in to come through and revitalize the infield. But one thing the Mets have been doing, and is their middle of the lineup has been generally solid. However, pitching has usually failed them. And this is finally Edwin Diaz. The closer situation seems to be buttoned up really nicely with Diaz taking the bulk of the work. Yes, I'm not a super huge fan of guys like Seth Lugo and Drew Smith. I really wish the front of the rotation, like Taijuan Walker, were a little bit more consistent. But, it is a long season. With that said, when it does count, as much as I hate to admit it, because I hate Edwin Diaz, he's actually been able to come through and do the thing that he's being paid to do. Now, you asked about Francisco Lindor.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that he hasn't really, given us $240 million worth of play. But that is, kind of what it is. You're moving from, as you put it, as an Guardians fan, the worst division in baseball to one of the more competitive ones. And that's the same thing with guys like Mark Hanna. He came over from Oakland. Well, Oakland, AL West isn't very good. And then you do that, and now you're facing the Braves, 16 times a year. Now you're facing, the Nationals before they imploded. So you went from like a meh team to, struggle. And he's been another one that's struggled as well. So pretty solid. Buck, and Buck has really been the difference. Buck Showalter has really been the difference as a manager because he's taken guys like Eduardo Escobar, Guillorme, and Jeff McNeil, who and you put them in the right positions to do well. Marte has been off and on with injuries, and you can't really help that. But Pete Alonso has been consistent, and that just is what it is. It's just been the sum of their parts. Nobody has really come through and absolutely killed it, but it's definitely been the sum of their parts, and it's translated into wins.
And I'll say this, just a shout out to Buck. Wherever he goes, he wins. And I still think he's undervalued of what he's done as a manager in this industry or in this league. Because wherever he goes, he wins. Now, he doesn't win World Series all the time, but he puts his team in contention for being in the playoffs, of being at that step to do so. Right. And I got to give him credit. So when you talk about, and as we move to our last topic of the day, second half, here we go again. My cursor doesn't want to act right. Let me scroll across the bottom so we get good. As we go through our second half predictions, I'm not betting against Buck Showalter, because if you get those Mets in the playoffs, and you talk about a 5 or 7 game series, I'll take my chances with that team and Buck Showalter. But other things to watch out for is, as you mentioned about Francisco Lindor's contract, Bryce Harper really hasn't lived up to that contract. And then you got somebody else in Soto who wants to get traded now because he may not get the contract he wants. Is it going to be worth the value? Where do you see Soto going? Who are your second half predictions of getting into that wild card? Who do you think is going to end up in that World Series? Talk about some second half predictions in your opinion.
Well, so as far as the Mets go in general, I think, obviously keeping it up, we have all of August and all of September to get through. And there are a couple of key games. There's looking at the schedule right now, there is a major 5-game series with the Braves as we have a doubleheader on August 6th. We'll need to go ahead and handle that. We do go to and face the NL West.
Yeah.
Colorado and the Dodgers are coming to Queens. So it's not a matter of whether or not the schedule is easy or not, because anybody can get it on any given day. It's just keeping it up, keeping consistent, and more importantly, beating the Braves. That's a thing that has to happen. Big series coming up in about 2 weeks. Have to keep the foot on the gas and beating the Braves. We played them 9 times in August, so gotta wrap that up nicely. Same thing with the Phillies. Really can't just let anybody catch up. As far as the rest of the season goes, obviously Soto is the big deal. Trade deadline is July 31st.
Yep.
Or did they move it back? Okay.
That's July 31st.
Yeah. So trade deadline is coming up in about 10 days ish. What does Soto do? He's turned down, 10, 15-year deals. The Soto thing is a little bit more interesting than that because it's not just as cut and dry as, well, they want to give you $500 million. Well, no, they only want to give him $440 million. And I think if you are his agent, Scott Boras, you want to be the guy that brokers the $500 million deal for your client. Not just because of the commission, just because it's a huge flex. That's number one. Number two, Soto in his young career, I think he's only been there 5 years in Washington, is
only 23.
Only 23.
Only 23 and has a World Series ring.
Has a ring. No, he doesn't have an MVP, but he does have a ring, and he's the face of the franchise at 23. Now, the question is, the Nationals are changing ownership. Whenever the Lerners decide to sell, they are going to change ownership sooner than later. So if you are Soto, can you guarantee that they're going to build the team around you? Because though he's at the top of the lineup, usually batting second or third, if they don't have a guy behind him that is just as a prolific as of a hitter, Soto's going to get walked. It's going to be Barry Bonds all over again. Nelson Cruz ain't it. He's 75 years old. And Josh Bell is a great player on a bad team. Like Josh Bell. Liked him in Pittsburgh. But Josh Bell isn't going to give you 40 home runs either and 100 RBIs. So the idea is, if Soto stays, which he can, they need to backfill that lineup in that 3, 4, 5 slot to take some pressure off him so that people actually pitch to him. I say he should lead off, but that's a different story. As far as the rest of baseball as a whole, how does the season end? How does it make up? The real question is, who falls first? We're seeing a lot of teams come through that are, you were saying they're 10 games back, they're 15 games back, they're 8 games back. Okay, cool. Who falls first? Now, the Yankees are outpacing everybody. The Dodgers are outpacing everybody. The Mets are, second best team in the National League. But the Mets have to play Atlanta 5 times in New York, 4 times in where are they? Cumberland, because they're not in Atlanta anymore. Mets have to play the Yankees twice at Yankee Stadium, host the Dodgers, host the Rockies. Wins. We got to play Pittsburgh twice. So wins that could be wins on a given day may not be so easily. And then, of course, in September, we end the season last week of September with 3 games at Atlanta and then home versus Washington at the end of the year. And that's just the Mets. The Rays have a similar schedule where they're going to have to keep it going and keep it pacing. The Yankees, maybe they still take the division anyway, but you don't want to limp into the playoffs. I don't care how big your gun is if you don't have any bullets left.
Exactly.
And that's the thing with them now. They did stumble out of the blocks. Is this a sign of things to come, or is this just something that they can brush off because they're so far ahead? It's going to be really interesting to see how far teams fall and who gets this thing, because this happened last year with San Diego. And if you're a Padres fan, you're going, well,
we've seen this story
before. There's still September.
Right. And just because you're 10 games back right now in late July, that can disappear just like that. People can go on a run just like that. Like you said, that's what's the great thing about baseball. Everything's in series. You ever have a 2, 3, 4, and sometimes 5 game sets where if you go on a sweep of 5 games here or 3 games here, you just caught up on 8 games and somebody's going to have to lose. There's no ties in baseball. Somebody's going to have to lose. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm going to put my money on the Padres, though. And I'm going to say for me, the NL is going to come down to, for the NLCS, I'm going to go with your Mets and the Padres and the NLCS because I think whoever's that wild card spot, and I think if the Padres sneak in there, they may be a dangerous team. On the AL side, I just don't see anybody beating the Yankees. I think it's going to end up being the Yankees and the Rays, and I think the Yankees will do it. But will we see a battle of 2001 when the Yankees and the Mets played in the World Series? Was that 2001?
That was 2001. I hope not, because ticket prices are going to be astronomical.
Yeah, well, that's true.
I'm trying to go.
Yeah.
So no, please play. Let it be the Mets in Kansas City again, because those prices were a little bit more reasonable. But as far as I'm not going to say like who's definitely going to win, because I think that's the easy pick. I do think that there are some sleepers. Houston's a lot better than their record, indicates. They still have 60 wins.
They are.
So they're 3 or so games back of the Yankees for the best record in the American League. So could Houston come in there? You say that, well, the Yankees are so far ahead. Well, no, Houston's right behind them as far as being the best goes.
Yeah, true. That's true.
And also, I do think that teams can streak at the right time. And Tampa's one of those teams that you got to keep your eye on.
Consistently.
They have, a pretty solid core, pretty, solid front pitching and, on the in their rotation. So I wouldn't count Tampa out, even though currently they're 10 games over 500 and 12 games back of the Yankees.
They were just in the World Series, folks. They were just in the World Series. They were there for a reason.
Yeah. Now, as soon as they get out of that dusty ass stadium, then that will probably drive up more interest in the Tampa Bay area. But that's a different story. I also think that yes, the Mets are looking good, but Atlanta's right on our heels. That is a thing. But Philly is quietly hanging around. And I'm actually going to be in Philly tomorrow and Sunday for games because I really want to see them in person to see what's really going on there. St. Louis is another team that can just sneak in there and take the division. Milwaukee, I don't know if they have the firepower to keep it going. I don't know if they have enough steam in the engine.
It's close.
So if I say who for the championship series, I'm going to go with the Mets because biased. But I think it very well could be Mets Dodgers. I think that very well could be the case. I think that's the safe bet. I think in the American League, I'm going to go out there on a limb. I'm really going to go out there on a limb. I'm going to say Tampa Houston. I'm going to say Tampa Houston. I'm not convinced that there are some surefire runaways in the American League.
That is interesting. Now, what do you think about Dusty Baker? Will he ever get himself a ring as a manager?
No. And it's not because he doesn't deserve one, for lack of a better word, but I think it's largely because if not now, then when? I mean, if he's not over 70, he's very close.
He's actually retired. 73.
Yeah, so he's definitely up there in age. His window is closed, and he's already retired once. So, if not now, then when? And that was the question in 2019 versus the Nationals. Yeah. Will this be Dusty Baker's year? Nope. If it's not this year, then I don't know what Houston does because they have all of the tools. They have all of the tools to be in that conversation. They're obviously in that conversation. They are strangling a pretty weak division. Should not necessarily coast through the playoffs, but they're expected to be in the championship series. I don't know what else Dusty can do. I don't know who that extra piece is that they need to get that gets them over the hump. legitimately cheating bastards. But but still, I don't know what they're missing, other than just flat out beating a very good opposite team, the Yankees. Tampa. Realistically, not a Minnesota, but who knows? And who knows what the wild card situation is too? Didn't they up the wild card this year, where it's like 3 teams?
Ooh, good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I thought that was a thing, but I could be wrong on that. Yeah, it's 3 teams.
3 teams.
Yeah, each division, and then there are 3 wild card teams. So each division faces off against the wild card team, which is.
Yep. You're right.
Okay.
Right. So right now, if the wild card started today, my Guardians will be 2.5 back. We'll see if we make one of those 3 teams. And on right now, it'll be Tampa, Seattle, and Toronto as the 3. And in the NL, it'll be Atlanta, San Diego, and as you mentioned, Philly and St. Louis will be in a tie right now. But Philly is.
But this is the thing, and this is why I don't like I don't like when they did this for the wild card. Number one, it doesn't give anybody, and it doesn't give the division, the league leader, any incentive to be first, because, well, if it were the case now, the Yankees would play Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, well, that's not necessarily something they should have to do.
Yep.
They've won 100 games. Let them have the first round off. As far as also, Baltimore is not a playoff team. So the fact that they're 3.5 games out of the wild card, Baltimore, Chicago are not playoff teams. They're not there.
Mm-mm.
So the fact that they're that close when they're not really there, it just kind of dilutes the product. And that's, that is what it is. But Miami's 6 games back in the wild card. Stop it.
Hey, they got a couple of World Series in their belt within the last 20 years.
Sure.
So.
I mean, if I had enough money, I'd buy a World Series too.
And then
they
sell
them at
them
Costco
off again.
Yeah.
Yes, literally. You buy a World Series, sell everybody off 2 times. You've done that, Miami.
Right.
Do you want to get Soto? Might as well get Soto. Go ahead and buy yourself one right now.
Honestly, kind of want the Mets to get Soto. But, I mean, we kind of need that space in right field. And also, if we pick up the rest of his contract, which I believe is only 2 or so years left.
It does have 2 more years left.
So that would be a good, opportunity to kind of revamp the outfield at the same time. We don't have, and that's another thing too. If you are the Nationals and you are the new ownership, do you want this $500 million albatross on your roster or not? Because if you sign Soto, then everybody else has got to go.
Yeah.
Strasburg isn't long for. I mean, if he hasn't retired already, he's done. So I don't know how they're going to continue to pay him. But anybody of interest, who do you bring? How do you bring anybody in?
Can't.
Right.
And your minor, and I'm not sure how deep your minor league system is right now to even build up what you can. It's no telling. You got to wait 3-4 years for those prospects to even be ready. So it's no telling. It's no telling. You might see back in the Expo days, how they were for a long time before they start getting some of the right hits with Bryce Harper. Then they got Strasburg, and look how long that took for even when they got to DC from Montreal. Still took some time.
Yeah. So, I mean, because to be fair, when they got here from Montreal, they didn't have Andre Dawson, they didn't have Guerrero, they didn't have, Randy Johnson, so it wasn't like it was the dynamic Expo teams of the early 90s.
Yeah.
But also, it does take something to develop, but it really just comes down to the ownership. What will this new owner do? Is the owner going to be a fiscal conservative and run the team like the Pirates? Or are they going to spend some dough to not just sell tickets and T-shirts, but to put a winning ball club on the field? There is already a taste for a championship as they won recently. And for what it's worth, the last championship here in baseball was 1933. So other than my grandmother, there isn't too many people alive that remember that. And she was 5. So the city demands a winning team. And, will they be able to produce that? And here's a real question. Is Soto worth $450 billion over 15 years? I'm not sure. I don't know if I want to pay Soto at 38 years old $80 million that last year.
Not unless you give him a Bobby Bonilla contract.
But even still, or Robinson Cano. I mean, they still paid him, but the Bonilla deal, that $1 million is going to be 10.
Exactly. It becomes a now Happy Juan Soto Day instead of
Happy Juan Soto
Bonilla.
Day. Every July 1st, he gets $10 million.
Absolutely. But as we get ready to wrap up the show, and I know sometimes my computer, can you still see me? My computer's still messing up a little bit. Okay. So as we get ready to wrap up, there we go, because I know sometimes I'm going this little update process, my computer acting up. As we get ready to close the show, once again, our breaking news at the top of the story or top of the hour that we mentioned, Vince McMahon did retire. Definitely check out WWE SmackDown tonight on Fox, because it's going to be definitely interesting to see on the sport aspect in addition to the entertainment, how that's going to relate to how wrestling is. And we talked about that early on. And we'll get a chance to drop this immediately after we finish recording so you can see it, the breaking reaction news of Vince McMahon and the other things related to baseball. Giant Crab Jamal, man, outstanding. He's the baseball expert, so definitely wanted to make sure we get a chance to talk baseball. But I got to give you your flowers, man. Got to give you your flowers. But I appreciate you coming on. Any last words before we get out of here for today?
I mean, I think that there's two things. Number one, this Vince McMahon thing, in spite of what one may think about what the spirit of wrestling is, this is a huge deal. This is as big as the NBC Matt Lauer deal when that went down. This is as big as what's the guy's name? Not Kevin Spacey, Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein. This is that big. We're talking about not just a key player. We're talking about the game itself.
Yep. Literally.
So that's kind of where we are with that, and it'll be interesting to see how he spins it, because that's also what wrestling is over most sports. As mainstream news invades the wrestling bubble to exploit whatever is happening, it will be very interesting to see how exactly it goes down and what happens to him, what happens to his legacy, and what happens to the product itself. People are dancing in the streets. Some people are very morose. I'm really just waiting and seeing, because we've had Hall of Fame talent, just perpetrate heinous crimes, and their legacy got sent to hell with them. So
absolutely. And very well said. And I couldn't have said it any better myself. We're going to be definitely listening and checking it out. And I know we'll have our reactions too, just to plug our wrestling podcast every Thursday that you see us live on these same platforms, to check it out, because we'll have more time to really reflect and deep dive it on the wrestling aspect even more about Vince McMahon. And we'll see how it goes, because we'll have SmackDown to talk about, Raw to talk about, even NXT to talk about if anything's changed in preparation for SummerSlam, which is one of their big marquee shows. So we'll see what happens.
That's next weekend.
That's next weekend. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's next weekend. So on behalf of your boy, Silly Sellers, Giant Crab Jamal, thank you for joining us. Once again, you could always check me out here, where we're trying to go more live now, but I still upload, content on Sundays. But if you have breaking news like this, we definitely got to talk about it. So you guys take care, and we'll see you on the next time.